Hey, folks, we're back. And, well, I don't know about reducing Alan's blood pressure because, well, we got another interesting topic here, which is regulations as it applies to deepfake. Ireland has joined Denmark in creating some regulation that grants people the rights over their likeness and their voice and is pushing for additional controls. And the whole idea here is that there should be some legal remedy that I can invoke when somebody steals my image and tries to impersonate me in some way that creates mischief or mayhem. Chris, are these laws going to be applied more globally, and frankly, are they enforceable?
Yes, they are going to be applied more globally, and yes, they are enforceable. Now, these particular ones we'll see, right? But it's absolutely the right step in the right direction. And as you're saying that, I know my mind has been so wrapped up with civic AI, canon, and all that. But this is specifically rules in the civic AI, ethical architecture we've created that AIs are required to obey. You cannot pretend to be somebody else, and if you do pretend to be somebody else, you need to tell them about it. And it needs to be situational, and it has to be attested to. And like a lot of things in developing this ethical framework, we're working through things that we find that humans do implicitly without really understanding. So we're having to codify them so the AIs understand what it's like to navigate a human world. At this level, on this side of the class for humans, yes, we have to have rules and regulations like this that say, if you are going to pretend, you have to say you're pretending, and you don't get to, free speech is not. Yeah, everything I want to end that paragraph with is a cliche, right? But
yes, go ahead. Let's hear your cliche.
You have to. Now I forgot what the heck it was, but this is classic stuff, right? Your grandmother taught you this. Don't lie. If you're gonna lie, say I'm lying. Comedy is a wonderful thing. Caricature is beautiful, but no, you don't get to pretend to be other people.
Or it's like referencing if you're writing a paper where you got, we've been doing this right for years. So
right, and as you folks know, I and my AI counterpart co-author all the time, and we have designed into the ethical structure, what that specifically means, and we do it better than I do with human co-authors. Am I just advising someone on a piece? Are we really writing it together, or are they writing it and I'm, sub or whatever it is? So there are ways to codify this, and again, as humans, we sort of muddle through it because we haven't written it down. For AIs, we have to, and I think it's a good mirror for human behavior sometimes.
Well, I think it also opens up the whole, what is a deepfake? Because as this technology is good enough to make a video of myself, let's say, for example, that is a deepfake. It's not actually me talking or me on the video. I might have created that for myself. I might have to do that because I don't have time to go shoot videos or whatever is my reason for doing it. Is that a deepfake? Even though I created it for myself?
No, but that's a super interesting point. So hang on, Alan, because my state where I reside, state of Texas, has actually been a little bit advanced in.
You have good regulations in Texas about this.
Yeah. So I looked up how the phrase deepfake is defined in Texas law, and part of that definition is the intention to deceive. What in the law, if I have that's like race or something like you need the intention to deceive in order to do it. So the interesting conundrum here is you're not intending to deceive if you are creating a Mitch Ashley AI video.
Well, maybe I do want to deceive them and make them think it's really neat. You're missing the point legally, guys.
Okay. Well,
legally. And Guy, you went to law school too, right? Or no. Lee went to law school.
No,
Sorry,
no.
Lee.
I watched Legally Blonde a few times.
So look, from the legal tree, hear me out. From the legal tree, this is an IP issue, an intellectual property issue.
This is where Denmark got it right. Go on. This is where Denmark got it right.
This is an IP issue. This is who has the right to your likeness, to your being, to your image, to your IP. Your image is part of your IP. Now, here in the U.S., the most famous case that kind of set the mark for this was the estate of Bela Lugosi, Dracula.
his heirs sued because they were using Lugosi, for Dracula advertisements all over the place. And the Supreme Court ruled that one's likeness is one's IP. So, Mitch, in the case in point that you brought up, you own your IP. If you want to make a deep fake, if you want to call it a deep fake, if you want to make a copy of yourself that you use electronically, it's your IP. You could do what you want with it. When Mike does it, that's a whole nother story. And if he's doing it and not asking your permission and holding it out there, it's an IP violation, right? That is wrong. And you're entitled to compensation. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Obviously, one could say, well, my image is part of my IP. The case of Lugosi, the estate of Lugosi versus, I think it was MCA or something, holds that. What about your IP in terms of what you've written that an LLM is then taking and when I go into the AI and I say, write this in the style of Mitch Ashley, and it writes an article that is in the style of Mitch Ashley, does Mitch have IP? Does Mitch have an IP claim there? Because it was still your IP, whether it's someone's image or some other form of their intellectual property. How far does that extend to letting the AI use it?
What's the intent?
Yeah.
Sarcasm.
So to me, that's the thing behind these deepfake regulations. Now, yeah, they're there to stop people from deceiving you. But the underlying, even if they're not deceiving you, you shouldn't be able to use my IP without my permission, without me being compensated. Now,
that's a good
there
point.
could be a public exception.
You can even bequeath your IP, your likeness.
Sure.
Einstein did that. Salesforce is using Einstein in their AI advertising. They had to pay $20 million to the Hebrew
the Lugosi
University
case
of Jerusalem.
The Lugosi case was his estate. He was long dead, long gone. Well, maybe
I don't know the
unless
legal
someone put a silver
principle.
thing in his heart.
But I don't know the legal principle upon which one's, at least in the United States, one's image is considered your IP.
It absolutely
but if it's based, don't say absolute and Supreme Court in the same 5-minute span. That's all I'm saying.
Well,
if there's
that's
a law,
true.
This is what Denmark did. Was codify it as a law. And I would be cautious about
here we probably
there.
don't have a law. We have case law. But the other thing is,
I'm personally saddened that a topic or an issue that I would have thought would have been covered by common law stretching back to the dawn of time has to actually be written down in the age of AI. But what do I know?
I wasn't thinking about this from the IP perspective coming into this segment, but I kind of like it. And the end of the back and forth, right? This is, when I'm writing something, co-authoring things, musician friends, we talk about this all the time. I tend to write like the last author I've been reading. So is that IP or is that what? So I think rules and regulations we need when we can't avoid them, but they only go so far. And I think getting past the cases you're talking about, it comes down to ethics, and that we can navigate personally. We don't hopefully need rules for, but I think we need this one now.
Yeah, I mean, there have been cases where you heard a musician had a jingle in his head and he wrote a song to it, and then it was found out. I'm sorry, yeah, and then if that jingle was someone else's IP.
So, Kate, I wanted to ask you, so this intent to deceive side, if I think about it specifically from a risk and security angle, I don't think, would there be any argument that whether it's through social engineering or through, stealing credentials or using or whatever it is, if somebody impersonates someone else or simulates someone else in order to gain access to a protected resource, but then doesn't do anything. They don't steal anything. They don't
Can make
copy
a
anything. They
difference.
don't use it in any way. It's still a crime, right?
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely, personally, I think so. Yes, I think it's still a crime. And because I think what you see, especially when you look at cybersecurity attack methodology, that's what they do, right? They start to look at the steps on how do I get access to resource A, B, or C. And sometimes they will test to see where they can go. So absolutely. I mean,
Right. Breaking and entering is a crime, even if you just broke, entered, looked around,
and you
and
don't
left.
take anything, right?
Even if there was no
this
robbery.
this is where like common law, common sense, all those other sort of things, they just all combine, because you're sitting here, you're going, how could that be a crime? And yet whatever deepfake use for whatever, like deepfake is as defined as an intent to deceive, forget about all the rest.
Well,
How could that not be, I don't know, inherently criminal? How can that be legal anywhere?
But these are resolved through lawsuits, aren't they, Alan? I mean, I'm thinking about the Vanilla Ice and the Queen Under Pressure song. They settled that out of court. You had to pay like $4 million to
whatever
be
it
able to
was, it's an
keep using
IP claim,
whatever
right?
it was.
It's a
But IP
monetary
things are
claim.
resolved out of court. It doesn't get hauled into the judge and say you did a felony, IP theft.
Well,
Yeah,
here
the difference
it's-
between civil and criminal. So
right,
that's
here
civil.
they're making it criminal, is what I'm assuming. But
There you go.
I'm gonna bet that there's got to be a satire exception or something like that. Especially for a public figure.
Yeah. Like an SNL type of, when
Yeah, the absence of malice, all of that stuff.
So if you have this warning, it's satire, or this, a water or whatever, some kind
I
of
don't know if
marking.
there's a warning. It's satire, right? I'll recognize it
because
when I
satire
see it,
is-
kind of
yeah,
thing.
That even the the best of the like live real person in makeup, whatever satire that you see, there's enough, generally speaking, of a clue that it's not the actual person. Now, does that apply in every single case? No, but in enough of the cases. But now we're talking about where 100% of the time, or approaching 100% of the time, it could be very, very difficult for the average person to tell. And so then it goes out in the wild, and here's something that was built and intended as satire, expressed as free speech, that is now off who knows where, being used to smear the person in question.
Which is why we need to separate, though. What we're really talking about is media authenticity, right? IP and satire and so forth are real, but we all understand the issue right now is that nobody trusts the media or has any reason to, right? And with these sort of simulations, arguably showing up in what we regard as information sources without any digital consent system, there's no reason to have trust in the media we're getting.
So, Chris,
right? So
I think that's a fine beginning. But you know who people trust less than the media?
The government. Yes, that's right.
And that's who we got to be careful about using this. But
see the last segment, right?
But yeah,
I thought you were going to say lawyers. Go on.
Well, they're kill the lawyers first, right? But that being said, here's the other thing. I do believe there's a way out of this rabbit hole. And it's, Chris, it's something I read in some of the things you've been publishing, which is we need a better system of identifying what's fake. That whether it's called civic AI or whatever you're calling it, Chris, is there something that people can go to that will tell them this is genuine?
That's the answer. Is not the first part. What's fake? Who knows? But we know what some things that are real. And having enough of those that we all reference against allows us to make better decisions about the rest. And that's how we all get through life. I mean, literally, that's how our brains work. We're not processing all the information. We focus on what's important. And the real things we can pivot off of, things that may or may not be real, are much more numerous and always will be.
Now, here's my belief in this. I think for people, baby boomers, Gen Xers, the die is kind of cast, right? We have gotten used to being in a world where we have 1,000 channels of TV, nothing on, and some of us believe everything that it's on that we're told. Some of us don't. Some of us just have our own opinion, and that substitutes for facts. I did believe that Gen Y, Gen Z, millennials, being digital natives, have a better true north, a better compass of separating fact from fiction, deepfake from reality. I'm not so sure
I'm with
anymore.
Mitch's eye roll and
Mitch and Mike. I saw
I
that.
haven't seen any studies. Maybe I haven't seen any studies to that effect.
So better, sure. Better enough. We'll find out.
But I do think there's an answer technically that'll help, and I think it may be too late for us, but they'll be in time for them.
So you're saying there's hope? It's Gen Z.
There's always hope.
That's what you're
He's
saying.
He's the optimist.
You're saying
Gen
that's
Alpha.
Gen X.
Gen
I don't know.
Alpha.
I was the optimist.
From a
last
Gen
time.
Xer. That's pretty phenomenal.
I think
Well,
we're starting
Steve,
from the
you'll-
premise that everything is untrue and working our way backwards.
All right. All right.
Backward- hopefully forwards, Mike.
Start with believing some things are true and build yourself up. That's a lot easier.
Let's take a break here. I don't know what's true or not anymore, but we're going to come back and talk about gluttony. Well, we're just on like the 7 sins today, huh? Okay. You're watching Tech Strong Gang.